parent company. A US judge has ruled Google acted illegally to crush its competition and maintain a monopoly on online search and related advertising. The landmark decision on Monday is a major blow to Alphabet, Google's parent company, and could reshape how technology giants do business. Google was sued by the US Department of Justice in 2020 over its control of about 90% of the online search market. It is one of several lawsuits that have been filed against the big tech companies as US antitrust authorities attempt to strengthen competition in the industry. This case has at times been described as posing an existential threat to Google and its owner, given its dominance of the search and online advertising business. It is unclear yet what penalties Google and Alphabet will face as a result of the decision. The fines or other remedies will be decided in a future hearing. The government has asked for structural relief, which could, in theory at least, mean the breakup of the company. In his decision, US District Judge Amit Mehta said Google had paid billions to ensure it is the default search engine on smartphones and browsers. Google is a monopolist, and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly, Judge Mehta wrote in his 277-page opinion. Alphabet said it plans to appeal against the ruling. This decision recognizes that Google offers the best search engine, but concludes that we shouldn't be allowed to make it easily available, the statement from the company said. US Attorney General Merrick Garland, the country's top prosecutor, hailed the ruling as a historic win for the American people. No company, no matter how large or influential, is above the law, Mr. Garland said in a statement on Monday. The Justice Department will continue to vigorously enforce our antitrust laws. Federal antitrust regulators have filed other pending lawsuits against big tech companies, including Meta Platforms, which owns Facebook, Amazon.com, and Apple Inc., accusing them of operating unlawful monopolies. Monday's ruling comes after a 10-week trial in Washington, D.C., in which prosecutors accused Google of spending billions of dollars annually to Apple, Samsung, Mozilla, and others to be pre-installed as the default search engine across platforms. The US said Google typically pays more than $10 billion to $7.8 billion a year for that privilege, securing its access to a steady stream of user data that helped maintain its hold on the market. Doing so, prosecutors said, meant other companies have not had the opportunity or resources to meaningfully compete. The best testimony for that, for the importance of defaults, is Google's checkbook, argued Department of Justice lawyer Kenneth Dintzer during the trial. Google's search engine is a big revenue generator for the company, bringing in billions of dollars thanks in large part to advertising displayed on its results pages. Google's lawyers defended the company by saying that users are attracted to their search engine because they find it useful, and that Google is investing to make it better for consumers. Google is winning because it's better, said Google's lawyer John Schmittlein during closing arguments earlier this year. Mr. Schmittlein also argued during the trial that Google still faces intense competition, not just from general search engine firms such as Microsoft's Bing, but more specialized sites and apps that people use to find restaurants, airline flights, and more. In his ruling, Judge Mehta concluded that being the default search engine is extremely valuable real estate for Google. Even if a new entrant were positioned from a quality standpoint to bid for the default when an agreement expires, such a firm could compete only if it were prepared to pay partners upwards of billions of dollars in revenue share, Judge Mehta wrote. Another case against the technology company over its advertising technology is scheduled to go to trial in September. In Europe, meanwhile, Google has been fined billions in monopoly cases. Subscribe to our channel for more updates. Thanks for watching. At least 5 people have been killed after Hurricane Debby slammed into Florida before weakening to a tropical storm. Debby is expected to bring heavy flooding to parts of Georgia and the Carolinas in the coming days. The National Hurricane Center warned of a life-threatening flood threat as the slow-moving storm drops torrential rains. Debbie made landfall on Monday morning as a Category 1 hurricane in the Big Bend region of Florida's Gulf Coast. Authorities said the dead included a 13-year-old boy who was killed when a tree fell onto a mobile home in the town of Levy County, located near Gainesville. In Hillsborough County, around Tampa, an 18-wheel lorry veered into a canal during the storm. The driver was found dead. In Dixie County, just west of Gainesville, officials reported that a woman and a 12-year-old were killed when their car crashed on Sunday night. In southern Georgia, another death, a 19-year-old, was reported after a large tree fell onto a porch at a home in Moultrie, local media reported. The slow-moving pace of the storm could bring catastrophic flooding. Jamie Rome, the deputy director of the Hurricane Center, said, Debbie's waves and strong winds helped blow 25 packages of cocaine, worth more than $1 million, ashore in the Florida Keys, according to the U.S. Border Patrol. In Florida, some 150,000 homes and businesses were without power on Monday night, according to PowerOutage.com. Another 36,000 residents in Georgia and South Carolina were experiencing outages. The storm is forecast to skim the coast, drenching southeast Georgia and the Carolinas on Tuesday and Wednesday, before moving inland near the South Carolina coast on Thursday. Before the storm made landfall, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency for 61 of Florida's 67 counties. Spiridon Ibeyaris told USA Today repairs on his Keaton Beach home had just wrapped up 2 weeks ago from Hurricane Idalia, a Category 3 storm that made landfall last summer. Man, I've done this so many times, Mr. Ibeyaris said. Forecasters predicted this hurricane season, which runs from 1st June to 30th of November, would be a busy one. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, said there could be up to 25 named storms in 2024. Between 8 and 13 of those storms could develop into hurricanes. Debbie was the 4th named storm of the year. It is thought that climate change may be making slow-moving hurricanes like this more likely. As the world heats unevenly, this causes changes in the atmospheric circulations that steer storms across the planet. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more updates. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been accused by a top Democratic senator of failing to disclose 2 flights on a private jet owned by a billionaire Republican donor. Ron Wyden, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, said that Justice Thomas did not declare a round trip from Hawaii to New Zealand with his wife on Harlan Crow's private jet in 2010. He used a letter to Mr. Crow's lawyer to accuse the property mogul of showering a public official with extravagant gifts, then writing off those gifts to lower his tax. A spokesman for Mr. Crow told U.S. media Mr. Wyden's inquiries had no legal basis and are only intended to harass a private citizen, and that Mr. Crow had always followed applicable tax law. It's concerning that Senator Wyden is abusing his committee's powers as part of a politically motivated campaign against the Supreme Court, said a spokesman for Mr. Crow, Michael Zona. Justice Thomas has not commented publicly on the letter. The Supreme Court did not immediately respond to an inquiry from the BBC. Justice Thomas has previously said that he believed he did not need to report trips with close friends who do not have business before the Supreme Court. It is the latest criticism against the conservative judge, whose previous travel on private jets and yachts have previously come under scrutiny. Under a new disclosure system, the judge in June amended his annual statement to include 2 trips with Mr. Crow in 2019, one to Bali and another to California. However, Mr. Wyden alleged in his letter that the judge had used private jets paid for by Mr. Crow at least 17 times in the last 8 years. The Oregon senator also cited a new trip that he said had not been reported publicly. Mr. Wyden cited U.S. Customs and Border Protection records of a trip from Hawaii to New Zealand in 2010 by the judge and his wife Virginia on Mr. Crow's private jet. The White House said Mr. Wyden's letter strengthened President Joe Biden's case for sweeping reforms to the court, which is currently dominated by conservatives. Mr. Biden last week proposed establishing term limits for justices, which are currently lifetime appointments, and an enforceable code of conduct. Such changes would be difficult to pass in Congress. The White House said on Monday that the most powerful court in the United States shouldn't be subject to the lowest ethical standards, and conflicts of interest on the Supreme Court cannot go unchecked. The heightened focus on court ethics has drawn scrutiny to other Supreme Court members. It emerged last year that Justice Sonia Sotomayor, a liberal, did not recuse herself from 3 cases involving Penguin Random House, which had paid her more than 3 masters, 2.4 million. Subscribe for more updates. Thanks for watching.
US President Joe Biden met his senior national security team on Monday as concerns of a possible Iranian retaliatory attack on Israel grew. Mr. Biden said he had been briefed on preparations to support Israel should it be attacked, while Secretary of State Antony Blinken said officials were working around the clock to prevent an escalation. Tensions have risen over the last week following the assassination of Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh, for which Iran has blamed Israel and vowed severe retaliation. Israel has not claimed responsibility for the assassination. Numerous countries, including the US and UK, have also told their citizens to leave Lebanon, from where it is feared Hezbollah, an Iran-backed militia and political movement, could play a role in any response. During Monday's briefing, Mr. Biden was told the timing and nature of an Iranian attack remained unclear, according to US news site Axios. A day earlier, Mr. Blinken reportedly told his G7 counterparts that Iran and Hezbollah could attack Israel within 24 to 48 hours. In a statement released after the briefing, Mr. Biden said, "We received updates on threats posed by Iran and its proxies, diplomatic efforts to de-escalate regional tensions, and preparations to support Israel should it be attacked again." He added that steps were being taken to respond to attacks on US forces, in a manner and place of our choosing. On Monday, several US personnel were injured in a suspected rocket attack on a US military base in Iraq. Speaking to reporters earlier in the day, Mr. Blinken said officials were engaged in intense diplomacy pretty much around the clock with a very simple message: all parties must refrain from escalation. Escalation is not in anyone's interests. It will only lead to more conflict, more violence, more insecurity, he said. He added that a ceasefire would unlock possibilities for more enduring calm, not only in Gaza itself, but in other areas where the conflict can spread. It is urgent that all parties make the right choices in the hours and days ahead, he said. Earlier in the day, Mr. Biden spoke to King Abdullah II of Jordan about efforts to de-escalate regional tensions, including through an immediate ceasefire and hostage release deal, a statement from the White House said. A joint statement from the G7 also expressed deep concern at the heightened level of tension in the Middle East, which threatens to ignite a broader conflict in the region. No country or nation stands to gain from a further escalation in the Middle East, it said. Talks that had brought renewed hope of a ceasefire deal to end the conflict in Gaza have faltered following the events of recent weeks. On the 27th of July, 12 children and teenagers were killed in a strike on the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Israel accused Hezbollah of carrying out the strike, though Hezbollah denied any involvement. Days later, Fuad Shukr, a senior Hezbollah military commander, was killed in an Israeli airstrike on a suburb of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. 4 others, including 2 children, were also killed. Hours later, Haniyeh was assassinated in Iran. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, said Haniyeh was killed in a strong blast caused by a short-range projectile fired from outside a house where he was staying while visiting the capital, Tehran. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said in an interview with Russian state news agency RIA Novosti that the killing would have a negative impact on the ongoing negotiations. Israel has not commented on the assassination, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said afterwards that Israel had delivered crushing blows to Iran's proxy groups in recent days. Following the killings in Lebanon and Iran, the IRGC said Israel would receive a severe punishment at the appropriate time, place, and manner, while Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said the conflict had entered a new phase. It is the closest the conflict has come to escalation since April, when Iran fired some 300 drones and missiles at Israel in response to an Israeli strike on an Iranian consulate in Syria that killed a number of senior military commanders. Flights suspended. On Monday, Jordan asked all airlines planning to land at its airports to carry an additional 45 minutes' worth of fuel, a move thought to be a precaution in case Jordan has to close its airspace in the event of a regional conflict. German flag carrier Lufthansa has suspended all flights to Tel Aviv, Tehran, and Beirut until and including the 12th of August. U.S. airline Delta has also paused flights to Tel Aviv until at least the 31st of August due to ongoing conflict in the region. The UK Foreign Office currently advises against all travel to Lebanon and has urged British citizens in the country to leave. It also advises against all travel to the northern area of Israel that shares a border with Lebanon. The conflict in Gaza began following the 7th of October attack on Israel by Hamas and other militant groups, which saw around 1,200 people killed and another 251 taken back to Gaza as hostages. Since the launch of Israel's retaliatory ground invasion in Gaza, more than 39,600 Palestinians have been killed, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Hezbollah and Israeli forces have also exchanged near-daily attacks since the conflict began, with hundreds of people killed and thousands displaced on both sides of the Israel-Lebanon border. Hezbollah and Hamas are both backed by Iran and form part of what Iran calls the Axis of Resistance, a loose alliance of militant and political groups across the region that oppose Israel and its key ally, the US. Subscribe for more updates.
Usha Vance is defending controversial comments made by her husband, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance, about childless cat ladies, telling Fox News that she thought critics had taken the remarks too seriously. Mr. Vance initially made the controversial remarks in a 2021 interview. He argued those without children shouldn't be leading the country and that women who don't have kids are miserable. The comments resurfaced after former President Donald Trump chose Mr. Vance as his running mate. The backlash, from critics including the actress Jennifer Aniston, was swift, and so was Mr. Vance's defense of his words. Now, Ms. Vance has weighed in, telling Fox News that the remarks were a quip, and she wished people would look at the larger context of what her husband said. Addressing criticism that his comments were insulting to those who struggle with fertility problems, she said Mr. Vance would never, ever, ever want to say something to hurt someone who was trying to have a family, who really was struggling with that. She said she understands there are a lot of other reasons why people may choose not to have families, and many of those reasons are very good. Mr. Vance was a candidate for Senate at the time of the 2021 interview, which also happened on Fox News. He told former Channel host Tucker Carlson that the US is run by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He went on to question why a number of high-profile Democrats do not have children, including Kamala Harris, who is now running to replace Joe Biden as president. Ms. Harris is a stepmother to her husband, Doug Emhoff's 2 children. J.D. Vance argued leaders without children were making choices for the future, even though they don't really have a direct stake in it. He also said those without children live in small apartments, chase wealth, careers, and status, and then end up hating those who have families and homes, whom he said are happier and better equipped to lead the country. Mr. Vance, who has 3 children with Ms. Vance, has since defended the remarks, particularly childless cat ladies, as a sarcastic comment in service of making his larger point. People are focusing so much on the sarcasm and not on the substance of what I actually said, Mr. Vance told the conservative media personality Megyn Kelly. He said his remarks were not aimed at belittling people who do not have children. Rather, they aimed to criticize the Democratic Party for becoming anti-family and anti-children, he told the host. Subscribe for more updates.